provide income support, restore jobs. Following the adage, never waste a crisis, the government of Uttar Pradesh last week introduced an ordinance that has scrapped most labor laws for 3 years, ostensibly for creating jobs and for attracting factories exiting China following the outbreak of the novel coronavirus. These laws deal with the occupational safety, health, and working conditions of workers, regulations of hours of work, wages, and settlement of industrial disputes. They apply mostly to the economy's organized sector, that is, registered factories and companies, and large establishments in general. Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat have quickly followed suit. Reportedly, Punjab has already allowed 12-hour shifts per day in factories without overtime payment to overcome worker shortage after the migrants have left in the wake of the national lockdown. Snatching away labor rights. Snatching away labor rights in the midst of a global pandemic and national lockdown is distressing and shocking. Over the course of the last 7 weeks, we have witnessed unheard of human distress as lakhs of migrant workers continue to desperately trudge to their villages after losing their jobs, livelihoods, and toeholds in cities. Despite overflowing food grain stocks, governments have been miserly in providing adequate food security. Income support to workers to retain them in their places of work has also been lacking. Significantly, migrant labor will be critical to restore production once the lockdown is lifted. In fact, factories and shops are already staring at worker shortages. Instead of encouraging workers to stay back or return to cities by ensuring livelihood support and safety nets, state governments have sought to strip workers of their fundamental rights. Opposition from trade union. Employers association have urged the central government to do away with most labor rights to address temporary labor shortages. Trade union leaders from the Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh to the Center of Indian Trade Unions and opposition leaders in Uttar Pradesh have condemned the ordinance. It will face a challenge in courts, legal experts say. Constitutional and political questions. The abrogation of labor laws raises many constitutional and political questions, but will it expand employment and output growth as claimed by its proponents? Such a step, by popular belief, will reduce wage cost, increase profits, and augments productive investment and growth. Improved supply is expected to create demand. Such reasoning assumes that labor laws are the binding constraints on expanding output. Surely, the lockdown has disrupted supply, but only temporarily. There are no inherent shortages at the moment, as the inflation rate remains moderate. Agricultural produce is rotting in farms for lack of transport. Industrial production is held up as migrant workers have fled for their lives. Income support. Before the lockdown, annual GDP growth rate has plummeted to 4.7% during October to December quarter of 2019-20 from 8.3% in the full year of 2016-17. The slowdown is due to lack of demand, not of supply, as widely suggested. With massive job and income losses after the lockdown, aggregate demand has totally slumped, with practically no growth. Therefore, the way to restart the economy is to provide income support and restore jobs. This will not only address the humanitarian crisis but also helps revive consumer demand by augmenting incomes. Scrapping labor laws to save on labor cost will do just the opposite. It will reduce wages, lower earnings, and reduce consumer demand. Further, It will lead to an increase of low paid work that offers no security of tenure or income stability. So, more questions. The rationale for scrapping labor laws to attract investment and boost manufacturing growth poses two additional questions. 1. If the laws were in fact so strongly pro worker, they would have raised wages and reduced business profitability. But the real wage growth of directly employed workers in the factory sector has been flat as firms have increasingly restored the casualization and informalization of the workforce to suppress workers' bargaining power, evidence suggests. 2. Is, is it right to blame the disappointing industrial performance mainly on labor market regulations? Industrial performance is not just a function of the labor laws but of the size of the market, fixed investment growth, credit availability, infrastructure, and government policies. In fact, there is little evidence to suggest that amendment of key labor laws by Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh in 2014 took them any closer to their goal of creating more jobs in industrial growth. The role of labor market regulations may be more modest than strong views expressed against them in the popular debates. Rationalized labor laws. Surely, India's complex web of labor laws with around 47 central laws and 200 state laws need rationalization. However, some more than ever before, reforms need to maintain a delicate balance between the need for firms to adapt to ever changing market conditions and workers' employment security. Depriving workers of fundamental rights such as freedom of associations and the right to collective bargaining and a set of primary working conditions will create a fertile ground for the exploitation of the working class. Presently, over 90% of India's workforce is in informal jobs, with no regulations for decent conditions of work, no provision for social security, and no protection against any contingencies and arbitrary actions of employers. Abrogation of labor laws, as proposed by the UP government, will free more employers from the obligations they currently hold for ensuring the job security, health, and social protection of their workers. It will increase informal employment in the formal sector instead of encouraging the growth of formal work. So, the conclusion: as India battles the economic and social consequences of the COVID 19 pandemic, many state governments have seized the opportunity to scrap labor laws on the pretext of encouraging employment. Such a decision makes little economic sense currently, as it will reduce share of wages in output, thereby reducing growth in a domestic demand and hurting output expansion. Significantly, exports cannot be an option for now as the global economy is starting at the possibility worse than the Great Depression. Hence, the UP government's move will only result in a race to the bottom on workers' pay and labor standards, making workers worse off without creating additional jobs, as it is a lack of demand that is currently holding up output growth. The UP ordinance needs to be revoked, lock, stock, and barrel. With reference to the silent or happy hypoxia, consider the following statements and choose correct one. That is, hypoxia is a condition wherein there is not enough oxygen available to the blood and body tissues. What are the constitutional and political questions raises concern the abrogation of labor laws?